Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Gay with God podcast. I'm here with a very special guest, Dalton Wesley-Goins MacBeth. And if you can say all of that in one sentence and put it on a driver's license, good for you. Good for you. So let me tell you a little bit about Dalton. Dalton was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, and developed cerebral palsy shortly after birth due to being born at 27 weeks. He was raised in southeastern Ohio in two Pentecostal denominations, the Church of God in Cleveland, Tennessee, and the Assemblies of God. As he grew up, he was curious about faith and started to discern a call to ministry after being baptized at 5 and starting to speak in tongues at 8. When he was 15, Dalton moved to Nicaragua and served as a Pentecostal missionary for a year during his senior year of high school. The next 6 years he spent at Lee University, the Church of God College, studying a BA in teaching English to speakers of other languages, a BA in theology, and an MA in theology. During this process, he also became an ordained minister in the Church of God. Since 2018, he has had to wrestle with queerness, racism, Christian nationalism, and COVID-19 in a way that has led him to settle and seek ordination in the United Methodist Church. He is an avid reader, history buff, traveler, Cincinnati and Ohio State sports fan, Grey's Anatomy fan, and a Swiftie. And for those who are not in the know, a Swiftie is a Taylor Swift fan. Am I right?
Yes, you are.
I had to ask my wife. I'm sad to say, although I love Taylor Swift, I did not know that her very best friends and fans are called Swifties. So I'll claim that one. So Dalton, welcome to the Gay with God podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. Tell us your story.
Yes, I'm glad to be here too.
Thank you.
Well, it's interesting where to start. Like I said, I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. My mom was induced when I was 27 weeks old. So I was a preemie, and I spent 3 months in the NICU before coming home Christmas Eve.
Oh wow.
So that was in going at Pentecostal churches, there was a lot of prayer meetings and things related to that and related to my birth, and it was really a miracle. I still believe it's a miracle that I came through that. Now, so that was always a part of my story and my personal consciousness growing up. I always asked about faith. I always knew that God loved me. It was something that I knew from as early as 3 years old. I remember when I was a kid, so I had a Bible. I don't know what kind of Bible it was. I don't remember. But I do remember using the little refrigerator in our preschool class and putting it on there and just like, telling people that Jesus loved them during like our show and tell or something like that.
That's sweet.
When I was really little. So apparently the teacher called my mom or something. He's like, "Hey, shouldn't be you're doing religion in the public school." I didn't know any different. Today I would feel very different, but back then I didn't know any different.
Right.
So I did that, and growing up, like I always had people tell me I was good to preach, all that sort of thing. But related to that, that I realized later on in my life because I was cerebral palsy and I was raised in Pentecostal churches, there was also always this expectation of supernatural healing. Every single week, people would come up to me and pray for me for this healing. Um, and I had a close enough, a strong enough relationship with God that I would always wonder what's wrong.
Right.
Why aren't I being healed?
Right.
Um, like if God really loves me and God really has the call in my life, what's going on here? There were nights where I would weep about that. I would cry and I wouldn't know what to do. So fast forward and I go to Nicaragua, because my parents were called to be missionaries there, and I experienced the people. I was also raised in a very solid, deep red Republican home.
Yeah.
Um, so with that, I was the kid that, when I wasn't reading my Bible, I was watching either Fox News or the History Channel.
Oh my. Yeah.
So, um, so that raised me in certain ways,
Sure.
to view the world in a lot of very particular conservative ways, even so much that the first website I ever designed was a blog about like Christian politics or something like that that I
Mm-hmm.
kept up with for like 3 months or what. Yeah, I did. I was the kid that like I watched. I consider myself smart enough. I watched C-SPAN,
Mm-hmm.
and then I tried to do some type of like theological analysis of C-SPAN a
Wow.
few times.
You're just
So
smart. You're so smart.
it was yeah, it was kind of funny. But I went to Nicaragua, and what really happened is, well, I was there during, I moved there in 2012. And so, it was the middle of, election season here in the US and all that sort of thing. And it really shook my world in terms of just how impoverished people are,
Mm,
how different people are, how marginalized people are, but how happy they still are.
mm,
Um, Regardless of the circumstances they're in and all that sort of thing. And then when I went to college, that was one of the first things cracks for me was, theologically, was realizing that, and this came up for me in 2015 when people started running for president, Donald Trump and Marco Rubio.
mm-hmm.
I was initially, in the Republican primaries, when I was still considered myself a Republican, I was an avid supporter of Marco Rubio because that was one of the things that had changed. The thing that had started to shift was that I realized that we in America, we really need immigration reform because from my personal perspective, I could no longer see people who were, who I loved, who I was ministering to, all those sort of things. And as
Mm-hmm.
soon as they crossed the US border, I was supposed to hate them.
Oh. Mm,
And I realized that no, that's just inconsistent, and I can't
right.
do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there was this dynamic too of like, in my ESOL classes, my English teaching classes, I was learning all these skills about, teaching English to immigrants and, caring for them and all that sort of thing. And so there was that, and then at the same time, um, taking undergraduate and graduate coursework in theology certainly changed my perspective on a whole host of issues. Um, and it kind of opened the door to a lot of things. I remember I took a class junior year on Catholic theology, and I read some of the Vatican II documents, from the council in the 60s, and that basically it opened my mind to the possibility that like the church was not only meant as an institution that was meant to isolate itself from the world, but it was
Mm-hmm.
also meant to go out and serve the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I had a similar realization when it came to I took a feminist theology class, and I realized that I wasn't raised egalitarian, but that certainly didn't feel right anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, this is wrong. The way people are setting these things up, and I mean, I experienced the power of the Holy Spirit equally, if not more powerfully, with women
Mm-hmm.
than I did with men. And
Mm-hmm.
so, for both my theological and personal experience, that radically changed that, and that really set up my framework going into grad school. And then in grad school, something huge happened, was that, so before I came out, I, became an ally. And that process was, my best friend and roommate, who was also in the graduate program with me, he came out to me as bi,
Okay.
my first year of grad school. And I decided that I didn't know how to I didn't know how to process that mentally and theologically, but
Mm-hmm.
I knew that the person he was hadn't changed.
Right.
And the call on his life hadn't changed.
Mm.
Um, and so for me, it was an example of just of loving him and interacting with him faithfully and true as a friend, um, that really opened my heart to the possibilities that then having the academic background, I was willing to do all the research I needed to do to
Mm-hmm.
come to the conclusions,
Yeah.
because I was just that type of diligent person.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that happens with a lot of people is they don't come around until they really know someone.
Mm-hmm.
So they really have a deep relationship with someone who identifies in the LGBTQ plus community. Um,
At this
yeah.
point in your life, as you're going to school and you're studying all these things and you're having questions about healing, and now you've met someone who's bi, did your parents or family members have any inkling that you were on this spiritual journey, basically, that you were kind of opening up and experiencing things that you wouldn't have been experiencing back in the home church?
Yeah, so basically my parents, like, they were always proud of my education and proud that I was
Mm-hmm.
learning about things about God and all that sort of thing, but I didn't really share a ton with them until after grad school,
Okay.
actually.
Okay.
So what ended up happening was, after grad school in 2019, no, it would have been 2020. 2019, I graduated my master's. I went to Nicaragua. I served there for 6 months. I decided I couldn't serve there anymore. And after that, COVID happened.
Uh-huh.
So,
And nobody served.
yeah, no one served anywhere. So while
That's
I was in
right.
COVID, I was stuck in a house, thankfully with friends, but like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it was a really tense and difficult time, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of questions about life arose.
Yeah.
Um, and what I was doing, what I was gonna do. Thankfully, I was in counseling during that time, so I was able to process through some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but during that time, that September, actually, my parents decided to remove me. I was part of their board of directors of
Oh.
their ministry in Nicaragua. And they
Oh.
decided to remove me because I refused to vote for Donald Trump.
No way.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Like they didn't even know anything about me supporting queer people. All they know is I wouldn't vote for Donald Trump and they removed me from their
Oh
ministry.
my goodness. How, I mean, I've heard of things similar to that, but oh my goodness.
Yeah, and also as far as the board of directors go, I'm the only person who was theologically trained.
Wow. Wow. And just
Uh,
because and so they made you tell them who you were voting for, or did you tell them
well,
yourself?
basically, I on social media, I was pretty vocal about
Okay.
asking Republicans to support someone else.
Oh, okay. Oh, so that was their clue. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like, I was still I was in the, I'm voting at that time, I was in the, I'm voting for Biden because I can't vote for Trump category.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, it was, one of those things, and they chose their supporters. They chose the opinions of the people that support them over me. Um,
Mm,
and that still has ramifications to this day.
I'm sure it
I
does.
currently I am not speaking with them. I'm speaking with my
Mm-hmm.
siblings. And
Mm-hmm.
reason, And I'm in the process of changing the spelling of my last name, MacBeth, back to the original spelling, the Scottish spelling,
Okay.
because one, it's not, so they spell it McBeath. I'll be spelling Macbeth,
Mm-hmm.
because that one, like, I don't want to be associated with them particular anymore, but also I'm finding richness in my ancient spiritual heritage that I
Mm.
do want to connect with.
Oh, nice.
And the way I think about it is I believe in the communion of saints, and I believe that there are generations of my family who are cheering me on,
Mm-hmm.
even when my family's not.
Good for you. Good for you. So that had to have hurt on a very deep level.
Yeah,
Yeah. How are
yeah,
you
it
dealing with that
really did.
now? Yeah.
I deal with it. I mean, really, it's just finding networks of people who are willing to support me now and willing
Mm-hmm.
to invest in me now. The two friends that came out to me during grad school are still some of my closest and best friends.
Oh.
Um, they're spread out. One of them's in Tennessee now. One of them's in DC. But I talk to them at least once a week, and we all, support each other a lot and that sort of thing. Um, and so going from that point, I guess after all that, I I came to, and then the last straw for me was honestly my church. Uh, my church left, or my church was a pretty big church there in Cleveland, Tennessee, multiple thousands of people.
Mm.
And they had a service in the middle of COVID. Um, they closed the church, then opened it back up. And when they opened it back up, I was there. I was singing in the choir. I was very involved. So yeah, I was in. Um, for all your other listeners, yeah, I was in the same choir as Cody College during college,
Okay.
and I was in that choir. Yeah, I was
Okay.
in the choir for 11 semesters. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, it was a great experience. But the only thing, but they did kind of wheel me out as the disabled kid, that sort of thing, where it was like, so I would never have any responsibilities in the choir, okay? But they would bring me out front and ask me to talk about when I was a baby, like to testify, during the service and that sort of thing. So I actually wrote a paper on that in grad school about how that was hypocritical. It was kind of interesting, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
to process that,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally. It was
Mm-hmm.
actually a philosophy paper, so that was interesting. Um, but I get through that, but this choir that I was in my church, um, I was singing in that choir for a few months, and then we had a COVID outbreak, and there were 15 people that died in our
Oh my
congregation
goodness.
within like 2 weeks,
Oh my.
and the church kept on going. The church kept on going like nothing happened,
Oh man.
and I was like, nope, I can't do this anymore. The other fact that I left out with that was right before that happened. Um, my sister's best friend um, ended her life,
Oh.
and that was a tricky situation. Um, but her, um, there were people who were saying that she was in hell,
Oh.
at her funeral, and the combination of all those sort of things, I just couldn't take it anymore. I decided, no, I can't be here. During grad school, I had the philosophy of I'm called to reform my church, but once I realized that wasn't possible,
Mm-hmm.
I decided I had to leave.
Yeah.
Um, so I looked around. Um, I knew I wanted to be in a city for a while, so I found Capitol Hill United Methodist Church on Capitol Hill, and it was really interesting, to go there, to feel accepted for who I am right away. to not feel any of the ableism, to not feel any of the just harm, or to know that all queer people are accepted for who they are. And then to be able to plug into their small groups and that sort of thing, do the sort of thing I love doing with church and all that sort of thing. So I was there for about a year. I was doing some seminary there. I'm taking a kind of sabbatical right now from my Methodist seminary. I was there for a year, and now I'm currently back in Cincinnati, just making ends meet and working through starting the ordination process. How this intersects with my own queerness is that about a year ago, I realized that I was queer because I looked up my experiences and realized it was categorized as something. So I am what they call, so asexuality is where people do not have any sexual attraction. But there's a spectrum on that.
Okay.
And I am what they call demi-romantic. So what that means is that it takes a long time for me to make an emotional connection with someone, and I have to have a very deep emotional connection with someone before I'm willing to date that person. So what that means practically for me is most of the time I end up falling in love with some of my best friends. And so it doesn't always work out because that's not upfront and because I don't have, boundaries, all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of dynamics with that. But it really just expressed to me some of the ways that I was not, did not fit the mold. And also I relate to a lot of more queer things simply partially because of that, and then partially due to my disability, because I'm not, a man's man, sporty, right. I like sports, but not able to play them and not able to do a lot of those sort of things. And then I'm expressing myself with a lot more colors. And also realizing that not normal, because there is no such thing as normal. That's the other thing I've learned. Most typical, so I still identify as heterosexual, but most typical heterosexual males are not obsessed with Taylor Swift.
That would probably be true.
Unless you're Travis Kelce, that's a new development.
Okay, that's right. Just watch football, you'll find out.
You'll find out. So there's all those things kind of, and I went to Pride this year in Cincinnati.
Oh, good. And
I felt at home in a way that I hadn't felt in a long time. And so that's kind of how I knew that even though I'm a small part of the community and I'm not as discriminated against as part of the community, that I belong and I can advocate as part of the community.
Yeah. Yeah. You're fantastic. May I just say that you are like this total package of being intelligent and sensitive and aware. I mean, there's just so many facets of who you are and how you decide to show up in the world and what you've been through, which has been since birth. As you said, you've been through a lot since birth, but how you've handled bringing your queerness into the space of your spirituality, that I'm trying to find the right words, how it's in my head, but it's not coming out of my mouth. But I'm so impressed with how you've gone through pretty strict, as you described it, red family members and red church, a very strict upbringing. And and to be told by your parents that you're out of the business because of who you vote for. I mean, that's the kind of narrow-mindedness that you have just broken the mold of. I mean, you came out of a narrow-minded situation, and you are just blossoming in this gift that God has given you to be aware of who you are at your core and live that. I'm just so impressed with you, Dalton.
Yeah, thank you. I do feel like I'm blossoming in a way, and I'm
Hmm.
like becoming who I'm meant to be.
Hmm.
And that is through right now that's pursuing ordination in the United Methodist Church as an ordained elder, so that I can serve churches and I can do communion and I can do weddings and all those sort of things.
Hmm.
Another big part of that is giving back. I want to give back by starting a nonprofit called the International Association of Reconciling Pentecostals and Charismatics that
Hmm.
advocates for the full inclusion of LGBTQ people in Pentecostal spaces when they can be, and bring them out of it into more affirming spaces when they can't be, that allows them to also fully express their um, charismatic gifts in fully
Hmm.
realizing themselves both mentally, bodily, intellectually, spiritually, all those things together. Yeah, in a holistic way.
Wow. So when you chose the Methodist Church, were you aware of the crisis they were in at that time?
Yeah, we're still in the crisis.
Yeah.
Um, so when I chose the United Methodist Church, I did so because I knew that I was someone who bridges the gap.
Good for you.
I am someone who comes from this very conservative space,
Yeah.
who's come into this very progressive understanding of God, and I knew that I could be a voice for keeping my church together.
Oh, gosh, I love that. I love that. Good on you. Good on you.
Yeah.
So let me go back for just a minute to your family, because I can still feel, maybe I'm feeling what I think you're feeling, but I can still feel that that's a huge loss for you, because that was something that you were very invested in, not only as a family member, but as a religious component of your life and the business.
Yeah.
And so even though you've separated yourself and given yourself space to heal, what does reconciliation look like in the future for you, do you think? Will there be reconciliation with your family, or will you need to keep those boundaries so that you can do the work that you're put on this earth to do?
I don't know. The
Mm-hmm.
thing about it is I'm committing myself to being queer,
Mm-hmm.
um, to, being open to, um, dating queer women, to advocating, and then for advocating for LGBTQ inclusion in the church. And
Mm-hmm.
that's still to be seen, how that will play out with my family. Um, my parents, I don't, I don't have much hope.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that they could change, that they could open up, but I'm not betting on it.
Mm-hmm.
I do have more hope with my siblings that as time develops and as they grow, as society shifts, as all these
Mm-hmm.
sort of things, that their minds will be opened up to a little bit more, that even if they do not agree fully with me in their lifetimes, that they will be able to know that I'm still trying to faithfully serve God and doing
Mm-hmm.
good things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I also, to be honest, I want to be a safe space for any other of my family members who would ever come out, my current
Right.
or future generations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that's the best way for me to live out right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And I think you're doing this beautifully, that there's no contention there. It's just that you've realized that that's a closed door right now, and you still have to do the work you're put on this earth to do. And sometimes we do
Yeah.
have to kind of separate ourselves from people who are trying to squash us and not allow us
Mhm.
to fully live to our purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a requirement for me. It's caused a lot of grief, but it
Yeah.
has also opened doors in me having to start to build chosen family and
Mm-hmm.
start to want to help reform the church so that queer people have chosen family.
Yes. Yes. Good for you.
So,
Wow. That's amazing. I'm just impressed with you all over the place.
yeah, I think it's me coming into my own, coming into who God has created me to
Mm-hmm.
be,
Mm-hmm.
my gifts, my talents. I think that advocating in both advocacy, the church, the academy are areas that I'm going to really be able to invest in and hopefully, make an impact for my generation of the church,
Mm-hmm.
to where no one, no one has to go through what I've been through. They know there's always other options. They know that there's a God who unconditionally loves them and wants them to be who they truly are, in community, and that's what matters. That what Paul says is true. That there is nothing that can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Amen. See, you're already preaching.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Well, and from the place that you're in right now, all doors are open to you because
yeah.
you've chosen to walk through them. And that's the
Mhm.
whole point, that when we see where we're expected to go, we still have the choice if we go through the door or if we don't. And you have
Mhm.
been yes all over the place. You just kept going, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. And I like how you shifted when one door closed. You already had a path that was open to you. And I think that's because you're very intuitive of God's call. You can feel it and you can sense it, and you're not afraid to answer it.
Yeah, that's something that's always been the driving force. Is I've never been afraid to answer God's call. It's
Mhm.
just who's going to let me answer God's call.
Exactly. Such a great question. That's such a great question. Y'all just get out of my way. I've got a path. Get out of my way. That's the way it is for all queer people at this point, that if they would just leave us alone and let us live our life
Hmm.
and love the God of our understanding and do our thing, we're not hurting anybody. We're just following our path.
No, it's true. It's following the path. And
Hmm.
I've seen, surveys recently where it's something of 75% or higher of where people were raised in the Christian faith.
Hmm.
And it's something to where, yeah, I don't want any other generations of queer people to have to choose between their identity or Jesus.
Yes.
I want them to be able to naturally integrate those
Yes.
things.
Yes.
Um, and to know, yeah, I mean, and that's the goal. That's the dream. I really believe. So we were raised in my Pentecostal church, very much raised in this atmosphere of revival, atmosphere of, you know, we want the Lord to move, we want the Lord to do things. Well, I truly believe that like the revival is among queer people in America.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
That it's this
Mm-hmm.
matter of what God is wanting to do is to raise up, people who are going to be committed to who they are and committed to the gospel at the same time, and really not committed to like straight up, just trying to convert people, but
Mm-hmm.
committed to loving people as their neighbor. That's
Mm-hmm.
the truth the truth I believe that is core to my Methodist faith is you can't have personal holiness without social holiness.
Mm.
You can't be holy before God personally unless you are truly working in society for the wholeness and justice of your neighbors.
Oh, I love that.
And so that's the vision that I walk forward with, is that even people who don't like Christianity, um, still find hope and inspiration in the person of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what matters most.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And that's why I wrote the memoir, because I
Mm.
wanted people to stop dying because they couldn't reconcile their faith and their authenticity. So we are
Yeah,
on similar paths. You
yeah.
hold down the Methodists, I got the Episcopalians. But
Oh,
we've come through what
yeah.
you guys are going through, and we're in a better
No,
spot.
it's true. You have both of my best friends who are queer are Episcopalians.
Cool.
And I actually would like to be part, if I can be, a part of the formal talks about uniting our churches.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk around that, but that's a whole nother conversation we got another
It is. It is. That's a whole nother podcast.
time.
That's great. So what is left incomplete in this conversation? Is there anything else that's on your heart that you want to say and tell us before we have to end this evening?
I think it's just that people need to know that they never give up hope,
Mm-hmm.
to keep fighting day to day, knowing that no matter what we go through from the day to day, that God is with us. God will be faithful to us. And we just have to keep walking it out and believing that all things will work together. They might not
Mm-hmm.
work together all in this life, but eventually work together for our good. And also,
Can you say that last part because it was a little bit garbled? Be sure to do
yeah,
what?
be sure to reach out and form communities, because
Mm.
there are going to be people who love you. They just might not be the people that are around you right now.
Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, that's right. And vote consciously, people.
Yes,
Vote
yes,
in
definitely,
vote in love.
definitely vote in love, because
Mm-hmm.
we don't need our rights to be rolled back in the
No.
next 10 years.
Yes. Preach.
Yes.
Well, Dalton, this has been absolutely awesome. I'm so happy that we were able to have this conversation. And I sense that we may be having more conversations in the future. So,
Yes, I'd definitely be open to that.
okay, wonderful, wonderful. So, so how can people find you?
Yeah. So people can find me, search Instagram. It's really simple. Pentecost, the number 4 LGBTQ.
Okay,
Or they can find us on Facebook at the International Association of Reconciling Pentecostals and Charismatics. We are
wonderful.
currently a pretty small group, but we are wanting to start to get going in 20 involved. We believe in, you know, we believe in LGBTQ equality, anti-racism, feminism, anti-ableism, working to allow all minorities to fully flourish in their spirituality.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So look up Dalton. You'll want to find him on Instagram at Pentecost for LGBTQ and the International Association of Reconciling Pentecostals and Charismatics on Facebook. Awesome. Dalton, thank you so, so very much for being here today.
You're welcome. Have a blessed day.
You have a blessed day too. And guys, listeners, thank you for coming back each week, supporting, sharing, and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to see more information and links to connect with Dalton, go to the show page for Gay with God at empoweredmidge.podbean.com, and I'll have all of his information there. And check out our Facebook group, Gay with God, where we do a monthly group entitled My Faith Journey. And if you need any help with your coming out or faith journey, go to the show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom and see how you can connect with me. And remember, we only have one more Ask Me Anything with my memoir. I've been doing this since January, but we have one more coming up, and you're not going to want to miss it because I might have a special treat for you. So if you're on the Gay with God Facebook group, look for the link for the Ask Me Anything that's coming up in October. The October 12th, as a matter of fact, because it will launch on the 11th, and I've got the last Ask Me Anything on the 12th. And those of you who buy the memoir, you might want to be in a book club with me. So I'm planning to switch up the Ask Me Anything and make it the Gay with God book club, because I can't give you guys up. I still want to talk to you. So anyway, that's how that's going to roll. So if you're listening to this podcast and are questioning whether you can be gay and be in a relationship, or queer, as we know from our friend Dalton, if you want to be in a relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQIA+, or not even sure if you're gay or queer, God has always been within you. Even when you didn't know it, you have always been gay or queer with God. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.